To this Sunday service of the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located in Durham, North Carolina, on the ancestral lands of the Eno, the Saponi, Sissipaha, Shakori, and Lumbee people. I'm Reverend Jacqueline Brett, and whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, your gender, and whoever you love, we welcome you here in this beloved community. If you're new to this community, and especially if you're visiting with us today, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat box. You'll also find a link there that will help you to learn a little bit more about who we are. And if you have not yet attended, we invite you to the Inquirer's class for visitors and newcomers, which takes place on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. on Zoom. Information on how to get to Inquirers will appear in the chat box, and you can also access the class via the homepage of our website at ERUUF.org under Events. I have a couple of very special announcements this morning. As many of you might know, our sanctuary has been under construction. It has been an amazing mess, the construction. But we were doing it all for a good reason. As we move into this new era of hybrid worship, we are having new audiovisual equipment installed. And so I wanted to show you where we are. We're still in the middle of things, but we have made some amazing headway. And so, Sean, if you would go over to yes, there is our new screen. That is actually hanging up in the sanctuary as we speak. And we're just waiting for the projector to arrive so that we can actually start showing things on that screen. So there we are. And see, I look like a little bitty person next to that big screen. But anyway, that's what's going on here. And for those of you who know Daniel Trollinger, give him your thanks. He has been working really, really hard, along with other staff here at getting this installed. The second piece of good news that I want to share is that last week we launched the 2,500 Hours of Love project, and we were given a pretty specific call to action by spokespeople Ann Verdine Jones and Sam Wones to count ourselves in by pledging at least 10 hours of volunteer work for racial justice and racial equity between now and next May 2022 on the 2,500 Hours of Love website. And just to be clear, because I said that kind of funny, we want the pledge to happen now. The call was to pledge by October 31st, and the work can be done between now and May of 2022. And so, as of 9:30 this morning, we have had, drum roll please, we have had 1,015 hours pledged. That's 1,015 hours from people who have said, yes, count me in. Have you pledged your hours yet? Join us in this amazing effort. And if you want to know more about the 2,500 Hours of Love project and celebration of Reverend Care's 25 years in ministry, watch last Sunday's service on YouTube, and also go to 2500hoursoflove.org to count yourself in by pledging your volunteer hours. That web address should be appearing in the chat box. So count yourself in, pledge your hours. We can do this. It's only 10 hours over the course of a year, so we can do this together. So this morning we are celebrating the start of Pride Week in Durham. Our worship associates are Henry Amador Batten, who is now a virtual member of ERUUF all the way from Mexico, Jay Vaughn, Julie Edmonds, and Lisa Jones. Music is from the ERUUF archive, and today's tech team is Sean Trimble and Michelle Sager, and Jim Van Verth is our sound engineer. And so let's now center ourselves into this time and into the place you're in right now. Let's just all center, bringing all of our collective energies together for this time. And now, let us begin our worship. We start with the Prelude by Kate Lewis.
This morning's opening words are by the Reverend Teresa Soto. Some people are used to keeping rules. Don't cross the street when the light is red. Only sensible. It turns out that keeping rules isn't the same as keeping covenant, which asks us, instead of keeping a bright line, to keep our promises. To what we have we promised ourselves, to this moment in time and place, to this community, and even tenderly interconnected, this planet. We promise ourselves to the idea that we are each and all human beings. We promise that there is something moving between us that we cannot tame and cannot measure. The chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. The light must spill to shine. The thing must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone, though you are made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong right here and right now. And together we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibility that the future is a space for growth.
May our chalice this morning remind us that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. Our light must spill to shine. Our first hymn this morning is Welcome Table with Lelena Romero and Michael Slack.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. No fancy style at the welcome table. No fancy style at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. No fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people at the welcome table. All kinds of people at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. All kinds of people at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days.
Hi, my name is Steve Hall, and I'll be taking a few minutes to tell you how ERUUF's covenant groups and chalice circles work, and why I am such an enthusiastic fan. These small groups, consisting of 8 to 10 members, provide a unique opportunity to get to know fellow ERUUFians in ways that more casual conversation rarely permits, and to get to know yourself a little better in the process. So, how do they work and how might you join? While covenant groups usually meet twice monthly, chalice circles meet one time each month, both for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Topics can be selected from those provided through a UU website or determined by group members. The topics invite a lot of personal reflection and sharing of each member's thoughts, feelings, experiences, and wonderings. The structure of these groups, aided by a member who acts as facilitator, is designed to create a safe space. That means free of judgments, interruptions, or unsolicited advice. Each person takes a turn speaking for up to about 5 minutes on the chosen topic, while other members give the speaker their full attention, practicing what we call deep listening. For me, as an extrovert, I have had to learn to close my mouth and remain in listening and learning mode, rather than mentally preparing my own reactions or jumping in with questions or advice, as I sometimes might otherwise do. I find this process opens me to learning from the wisdom and life experiences of fellow group members. And it serves to remind me that my concept of truth and reality is, well, just that, only mine. This structure also prevents any one voice from dominating, which, as you know, can so often happen in groups. Some discussion often follows the individual sharing, where we explore common themes that may have emerged and insights we've gained from one another. It all makes for a very precious experience that I look forward to every month. During this past year and a half, when so many of us have experienced isolation and other challenges, these groups have provided a particularly invaluable emotional lifeline, and also a special way to remain connected with our beloved ERUUF community. There are groups that meet during daytime hours, early evening, even on weekends, so options are available to meet your own needs. Joining is as easy as going to the ERUUF website, clicking the word connect, and choosing the Covenant Group's Chalice Circles link. And registration is now open until October 5th, but early registration is strongly encouraged. All you need to do is take that first step. I feel certain you'll be very glad you did.
A litany for survival, Audre Lorde. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed future. Like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it may not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
There's no picket sign among the protesters today about how I've been made to feel, small and often unloving of myself, told I am meaningless to all, yes, especially to the divine. The signs fail to reflect the fear and desperation of those who I have secretly loved or denied myself of loving, nor the sting or burn from a battered soul, how I stood without help from another. But they'll show up to chant and attack who I am, weaving poison throughout my successes. Let's face it, their senses are closed to my greatness, my gender, my color, my message. They claim that through parenting, I'll pass my dysfunctional seed, though my parents, heteronormal, somehow managed to skip me. How am I fit to parent except by their decree when they cheat and they scheme to shape my destiny? They will force me to birth an incestuous hate or a drug I was given while out on a date. The same folks will go on to refuse the children's support, say that I'm a bad parent, though they took my choice. Righteously, violently waving their signs, marching and screaming the entire time, pro-life, yet they're willing to sacrifice the health and wholeness of a traumatized mother. Pro-life, but willing to inject the final cocktail into the arm of that baby's father. Pro-life, yet willing to clog the infant's lungs until they die from carbon dioxide. Pro-life, yet they'll force them to quench their thirst with water not fit for consumption. Pro-life as long as they can declare my lived experiences are a lie. Pro-life, but before queer people can adopt the children, they would rather see them die. Pro-life, so they can get to claim that they're a better person than me. Pro-life, but they won't wear a mask because compliance says they're not free. And they will use that so-called freedom to infringe upon yours and mine. Proverbs is their justification. They say it's a sin if I embrace pride. Pride's detested, disgraceful, and shows I'm unwise. Yet they say it through mouths with conspirators' lies. Yet my spirit calls me to bridge the divide. Pull them close as they push me away. But their words cut like barbs, slicing into my flesh, no matter how hard I pray. What if pride does not make me less humble, but reminds me I'm worthy of love and gives me the courage to open myself, use my wisdom, and still feel I'm young? I should be proud of myself. Why should I be ashamed? I bask in a life where possibilities reign. For it's possible the answers will be spoken as but a whisper in the wind. Rest in the bold backs of trees, be found among beloved kin. It is possible to find beauty within pain-filled eyes and see the gift of hopelessness, hopefulness pass between yours and mine. It is possible to create a healthy, clean world where we listen to science and all voices are heard.
I invite you to join with me for words of meditation and reflection. And these words are from the Black Trans Prayer Book and are called Blessings of Our Ancestors, Our Praying Grandmothers by Deja Baptiste. You are not alone. You are not the first or the only. There is a lineage you are inheriting. It is your courage, your faith, your spirit that sets you apart. We are not doomed. We are not cursed. We are the blessed ones. The blessing we are blessed to know. Our spirits are not only bound in our skin, flesh, that bodies, like names, are expressions manifesting the soul we bear outside of time and beyond infinity. There is lineage here. You were never the first time your family, your hometown, your faith, your lovers loved and were loved by us, the blessed ones. We heard and nurtured our ancestors' dreams and came forward to create and dream, imagine and plant, live live in the physical, what is celebrated and cherished and renewed in the spiritual. Amen and Ashe.
Embracing possibilities. I don't know how any member or ally of the LGBTQIA plus community could begin to celebrate Pride without contemplating the idea of possibilities. Our entire existence has been tested, stretched, pulled, and formed from the need for these possibilities. I am fortunate enough to be able to remember when I was deemed worthy enough to marry the person I love. I say fortunate because I was also part of that struggle, that movement, and I can still, to this day, taste those sweet tears of victory. I can vividly remember the look on our friends' faces when they would shout, yet another state would marry us. Can you imagine? And when our door opened, my husband and I walked right through it. Not only embracing the possibility, but making it a reality. There are many, many young queer kids growing up that will not understand that struggle. And I guess that's just what happens from generation to generation, perhaps with time. But every time I see another wedding announcement or a photo of a queer couple exchanging their I do's, I can only remember that a mere 6 years ago, this was not entirely possible in this country. Embracing possibilities also makes us the folks that continue to question and to ask, why not? Once Joel and I were married, we wanted to have children, and I am very old-fashioned. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby in the baby carriage. But that was not my reality. Yet we embraced that possibility and we leaned heavily into the why not? Why not us? And because of that hope, we made that possible. Well, us and a top-notch law firm and a really great attorney and a really cool judge and lots of friends and lots of family. And also stepping into that exact moment where that possibility deserved to breathe, which can only bring me to what community means when it comes to embracing any form of possibility. Wars are seldom won alone. It takes courage, it takes vulnerability, and the understanding that it is more than just the belief impossibility, but also the willingness to endure the pain and to gain scars along the way that bring about that change. It takes hope, it takes faith, it takes imagination, it takes the understanding that all things are possible, that all people are worthy, and that every body's voice and choice is respected. It is no wonder that so many of us gravitate towards spaces like ours, communities that know that it does not have to happen to me in order for me to want to take a stand. Communities that understand that we are all still so fragile and open to danger when left out alone. Communities that know deeply that so many of our siblings, queer, female, trans, people of color, and on are still in so much real danger. Each time my family enjoys some form of victory, I always think, okay, so maybe now we can rest easy and bask in some of this glorious glow, but it's always very short-lived. After all, there has probably never been a better time to keep reminding ourselves of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King when he said that no one is free until we are all free. And maybe then, my friends, we will all be able to take that much, much deserved rest. Namaste.
Good morning. I'm Julie Edmonds, and I'm here on behalf of myself, my wife and longtime partner, Sarah Terry, and our 3 children, Sam, Emma, and Jake Terry Edmonds. Yes, we inflicted the hyphenated names on them and not us. Reverend Brett asked us to tell our story about our fight for me to obtain legal recognition as the parent of our 3 children. But this is not just our story, this is also the story of all the different people who came together to make change happen, and it has a little ERUUF twist. The story begins 23 years ago when Sarah and I were first considering having children. When things have changed so much, it can sometimes be hard to remember how it used to be, so let me remind you. This is a time when marriage equality was about 20 years in the future, and gay parents were often either prevented from adopting children or denied custody of their biological children. For example, in April 1995, the Virginia Supreme Court revoked a lesbian mother's custody of her 3-year-old son, citing the moral climate of her home and the social condemnation that her son would face outside of her home. Only 3 years after that ruling, Sarah and I began the process of expanding our family. In 1999, Sarah gave birth to our first child, and at that point, I had no legal relationship to him. Sarah did try to add my name to the birth certificate in the hospital, but she was expressly prohibited from doing so. Because of our desire to make sure I had some sort of legal relationship, we worked with Sharon Thompson, a well-known Durham gay rights lawyer, and did what was called a friendly lawsuit, where I sued her for partial guardianship. This was granted by a court, so I at least had some legal protection. 2 years later, we were having twins, and the need to obtain more substantive legal recognition took on a new urgency. Throughout her time in Durham, Sarah has always been very politically active, playing a leading role in Durham People's Alliance, a political action group also known as PA. During endorsement season, she would make sure that the candidates were asked about gay and lesbian issues. One elected official that people don't think about, but who plays a really critical role, is the clerk of court, who signs adoption papers. In 2002, the longtime clerk, who was against gay adoption, had retired, and there was an opening for a new clerk. Sarah made sure that PA asked potential candidates whether they would approve an adoption for same-sex parents. I still remember standing at a Meet the Candidates event with then-candidate Archie Smith, Sarah, who was 6 months pregnant with twins, and with Sam hanging on her leg, pointed at her rather large belly and said, "Do you swear that if you're elected, you will be open to signing an adoption so that my children can have 2 legal parents?" He looked at her and said, "If a lawyer brings me a good rationale, I will." Archie was later elected and still serves today. Now remember Sharon Thompson, our lawyer. So for many years, she had been working on laying the groundwork for gay family second parent adoption. Second parent adoption allows a second unrelated adult to become a parent of a child without the original parent losing any parental rights. At that time, I qualified as an unrelated adult because I was not married to Sarah. Sharon believed that with a new clerk of court in Durham, the time was right to move forward with doing the first second parent adoption with a gay or lesbian couple in North Carolina. She was looking for the right test case, and we met the criteria. They wanted a committed couple who was planning to stay together, check. Someone who had used an anonymous donor, thus avoiding a potential complication, check. And someone where the grandparents were not going to try and obtain custody, double check. So now Sharon had the legal strategy. She had clients that met the criteria, us, and a newly elected clerk of court who would sign a judge's order. Before we got our case before a judge, however, we had to go through lots of hoops. I had to have a social worker come to our home to assess my fitness as a potential adoptive parent. The social worker was very confused when she realized that I was trying to adopt the children with me since birth and who were crawling all over me. I also had to get letters of recommendation, 2 of which came from ERUUFians, Arvid Straube, our previous minister, and Barbara Sheline, who was our pediatrician. We then appeared before Judge Marcia Moray, who we later realized also came to ERUUF, although we did not know her at that time. Sharon Thompson had developed a strong legal case, and Judge Moray was pleased to be able to sign the approval. I can still picture her in my mind saying that she spent so much time in family court trying to get people to take responsibility for children that she was delighted to find people who actually wanted to claim that responsibility. With her signature and the approval of the clerk of court, we became the first gay family to receive parent adoption in North Carolina. Over the next several years, hundreds of families were able to follow in our footsteps. Now, as you know, every time there are 3 steps forward in progress, there are usually some steps back, and you just hope that the steps don't put you back in negative territory. Although our adoption was approved at the local level, for a variety of reasons, it never was officially processed all the way through the state, and my name was not placed on the children's birth certificate. 4 years later, a lesbian couple who had done second parent adoption broke up, and one of them sued to get the adoption overturned. This case made its way all the way to the North Carolina Supreme Court, where the court decided that all of our second parent adoptions were invalid. We were involved in that fight too, but the upshot is that I was back to square one, which was a devastating feeling as I had lost all of that hard-won emotional security. This was also around the time that Amendment 1 was getting put on the ballot, and I was just done with North Carolina. I found an attorney in Massachusetts, one of the few states that allowed out-of-state couples to do adoptions without being residents. After many months and expenses, the 5 of us finally got our full legal and second parent adoption, which, following the Constitution's full faith and credit clause, was recognized by North Carolina. It was at this point, when Sam was 12 and Em and Jake were both 10, that my name was finally placed on their birth certificate. There is much more to this story, as some of you who saw our documentary film know, but the point is not that we are heroes, rebels, or anyone special. In fact, being a rebel is not a totally natural role for me, definitely not as natural as it is for Sarah. I am a firstborn, I was raised Mormon, and I have a German mother. All of those things which have conditioned me to be a rule follower. But I got to a point where I asked myself whether I could look in my children's eyes and tell them I wasn't going to fight for them because challenging the status quo was a bit out of my comfort zone. So at some point, I didn't really have a choice. So we were ordinary people who were trying to solve a very important personal problem and who happened to be in the right place at the right time and ready and willing to step into a scene set by many others over many years. People like Sharon Thompson, who had been strategizing for years. People like Marcia Moray and Archie Smith, who were willing to do the right thing. Change happens when people interact with systems that have been prepared over a long period of time. The true heroes of this story, and most stories, are the people behind the scenes who have been working for years to prepare the groundwork and make change possible. In our story, these people were attorneys and legal professionals. In other stories, they may be environmentalists, community organizers, researchers, or members of the PTA. Some changes seem sudden, like switching on a light. But real change is never sudden. It is the culmination of years of work by many people, most of whom we will never know. Well, now that we have marriage equality and LGBTQ folks can adopt and have children together, does that mean there's nothing left to do? Well, not exactly. The news is full of state legislative efforts to prevent transgender individuals from living their full lives. There are efforts to do everything from restricting medical treatments to preventing kids from playing on sports teams. ERUUF hosted a great multi-week workshop on transforming hearts in the spring, attended by many of you, and I would not be surprised if that training made a repeat appearance. We have a growing number of transgender individuals in this congregation, some of whom have grown up here, and we need to look out for their rights. There are 2 additional pieces of legislation making their way through Congress that ERUFians may want to be made aware of. The first is the Do No Harm Act. The Do No Harm Act will amend the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that was intended to provide some, but not unlimited, protection to the rights of religious minorities, such as the right to attend worship services while in federal prison and the right to wear religious attire while serving in the military. This law has been abused to allow people to do things like deny services to members of the LGBTQ+ community. The Do No Harm Act will clarify that religious exemptions apply only to those situations where others are not harmed. Helen Wolfson, another ERUFian, has been advocating Congress around this act. Feel free to reach out to her if you would like more information. And there's also the Equality Act, which adds sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, as protected categories in the Civil Rights Act and other places, and both of these pieces of legislation are supported by the UUA. So all of us have a role to play in being part of the changes that we want to see. There is still a tremendous need for all of us to be involved, whether we are the heroes behind the scenes laying the groundwork or the ones who are the visible representatives of all of that hard work.
We are frightened. We are angry. We are rising. We are hopeful. We are peaceful. We are striving. Won't stop fighting. Won't stop marching, won't stop dreaming, won't stop loving, and proclaiming, and believing. Our voices are united, louder than hate. We have gathered here, we've had all we can take. The time has come, you will hear our call. We're fighting for liberty and justice. Sing with us. We are frightened. We are angry. We are rising. We are hopeful. We are peaceful. We are striving. Won't stop fighting. Won't stop marching. won't stop dreaming, won't stop loving, and proclaiming, and believing. Our voices are united. Our voices are united, louder than hate. We have gathered here. We've had all we can take. The time has come. You will hear our call. We're fighting for liberty and justice for all.
Happy Pride, everyone. When I began discussing the formation of this worship service with members of our Pride Plus Action Group, we viewed it as an opportunity to launch a week of Pride celebrations taking place in Durham, culminating next Saturday with the official celebration of Pride. And for those of you who might be watching this service live streamed and do not live in North Carolina and you're wondering, wait a minute, Pride is in June. What are you folks celebrating in September? Well, in June, it's fiercely hot down here in North Carolina, so we always have our Pride celebrations in September when the weather is a lot more manageable for folks to deal with, especially when we're in a parade and dancing and having a good time. Though we knew there would not be a Pride parade in Durham this year because of the pandemic. We were holding out hope, indeed embracing the possibility that the Pride Festival, at least, would take place this year. Unfortunately, we found out this past Thursday that due to how Durham is being impacted by the pandemic, Pride will be a virtual online event yet again this year. May we all embrace the possibility that in-person celebrations of Pride and everything else in life will take place in the Bull City next year. Meanwhile, our hearts can continue to celebrate, irrespective of whether we're doing so in a parade, at a party online, or gathered here together in this time to remember and reflect on some of the histories, her stories, and their stories of possibilities named and embraced by the LGBTQIA plus community over the past 50 years or so, and what new possibilities must still be embraced in the years ahead. And because we have some folks right here at ERUUF and within Unitarian Universalism who have been on the front lines of these stories, as you have already seen in Julie's story that she shared, I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to reflect together on what has happened and what still needs to happen in terms of justice and LGBTQ rights for this community. So we began our service this morning with the hymn, Welcome Table. And that was no small or insignificant accident. UU's embrace the idea of becoming congregations welcoming of the LGBT plus community around 1989 and 1990. And we here at ERUUF have also held the designation of welcoming congregation since the 1990s. If you're ever driving up Garrett Road at a certain time of day and see our digital sign, it will sometimes simply have the word welcoming with a rainbow flag next to it. That singular word, with the flag is so powerful and significant among certain people who are driving by that we have literally have had people stop in at our campus wanting to know more, because most of those people know what it's like to be unwelcomed in a faith community. Sometimes it has seemed as if they just wanted to know if we're for real. The other significant thing about the Welcome Table song is that it was sung by Reverend Michael Slack with his partner, Lelena Romero. Lelena used to lead our beloved community chorus. And earlier this year, Michael led us, as he does with congregations around the country, in a transgender awareness program, a 6-week program. We who participated not only learned what it means to be a congregation that welcomes the transgender community, but the program was so profound in its invitation for us to embrace the possibility of not simply being a welcoming congregation, but to become radically welcoming and to live more authentically in beloved community as a spiritual practice. We still have a lot to learn about being radically welcoming, and will continue to do so. But I extend a pre-invitation now to you to sign up for the Transgender Awareness class when it's offered again this coming year in February or March. Because here's the thing. Someone had to first imagine, then embrace the possibility of faith communities that would welcome and celebrate the LGBTQ+ community. We here at ERUUF and within Unitarian Universalism writ large have so embraced that possibility that we no longer even think of it as a possibility. It's become our way of being, knowing that we're safe here, that we can authentically be who we are and celebrate ourselves here. We've still got some work to do and some ways to go, but we're living this possibility. I often say that possibility and living into possibility is my jam. I was looking back on some of my sermons and realized that I actually preach about it quite a bit. It is so much a part of my personal theology that I can honestly say that if there is any sense of salvation that I have, it is through the embrace of possibility. I believe that possibility is so important that it is a place of existential freedom, the space from which we imagine what is not yet here and then name it and claim it by moving into its embrace through the specific action of asking ourselves, what would it be like to live into what we imagine? And when I personally have been up against it, in difficult situations, it has been my sense of what could be possible, even if I don't even know what it is yet. And my belief that I only need to make a way out of no way by joining with others, because none of us ever does this alone. That if I do that, I can make it so. We can make it so. Because to embrace possibility means being in the place where imagination lives and breathes. It's about the embrace of community and creativity and persistence and coming to know oneself as resilient. So whenever someone says that something is not possible, we need to immediately ask, why? Is it because it's truly not possible? Or is it because someone somewhere has decided that for whatever reasons, they just don't want to make it so? Progress is made when we interrogate those things that are declared not possible. As in, not possible to be legally named the parent of your child. Not possible to get married, not possible to walk down a street freely with the one you love without being harassed or harmed. It was only when people imagined, named, and embraced these very basic existential possibilities and rights in being human to exist as one's full self that we now have begun to live with all of these possibilities as ways of being and points of fact when they did not exist before. And it's not always easy. It takes determination when all might seem lost at times. It takes persistence and courage, especially when you're on the front lines. Had Sarah and Julie not embraced the possibility of them both being declared the mothers of their children legally, many people would not even think that was possible or even necessary. But of course it was. It even seems pretty ridiculous when you think about it now. But the right of same-sex couples who simply want to be named the parents of their children, loving and caring for their children as anyone loves and cares for their children, was deemed not possible in the eyes and minds of some until they were shown otherwise. A couple of years ago, the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising was celebrated nationally, and we found out during that time that we actually have a member of our congregation who was present at Stonewall. And for those of you who might not know what Stonewall is, it was a riot or uprising, depending on what you want to call it, that occurred in Greenwich Village in 1969 as a result of a police raid on a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. The New York City police had a record of discrimination and abuse toward the gay community with many raids on their bars. And the Stonewall Uprising ushered in the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. It was our own Carol Ann Antunes who was at Stonewall back then. When I asked her about it, she described how one evening in 1969, when she was at a gay women's bar called the Duchess, suddenly the women within could hear police cars and sirens going off, and when they came outside to see what was going on, they witnessed a lot of men being beat up by the police and a drag queen being saved by the crowd. Carol Ann and other women from the Duchess hid on the steps at the entrance to the train station, with some of the men from the Stonewall forming something of a barrier to protect them until they were able to leave safely. Carol Ann says she couldn't believe what she saw and heard, the vile things that were being said to people, and how the police seemed to enjoy beating them with their billy clubs. The uprising lasted 4 days because, Carol Ann says, people were finally tired of being harassed. I also imagine they were demanding another possibility and grabbing hold of it. Carol Ann says that Stonewall changed the way gay women and men walked through Greenwich Village after that. While before she'd always felt a little cautious in the area, after the riots it became easier to walk the streets. I told Carol Ann, I wrote to her an email that what struck me as I learned about her story is how I, decades later, walked around those same streets in Greenwich Village with my gay and lesbian friends, not thinking anything of it, not even knowing about the price that had been paid to give me the freedom to casually and freely walk those streets. Thank you, Carol Ann. And there's another person who embraced the possibility of LGBTQ rights through her participation in marches and protests. Sean, can we bring up that slide? Here at the center of this slide is Diane Blount, our very own Diane, who just so happens to be Carol Ann's wife. Here, Diane is on this historical timeline in the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York, a museum and archives which contains the world's largest collection of materials by and about lesbians. Seeing Diane in this photo embracing the possibility of full human and civil rights for lesbians probably comes as no surprise to those of us who know of her strong commitment to equity and justice today. Thank you, Diane. Finally, I want to share with you, you can take the slide down now. I want to share with you the story that most of you probably don't know, but it's about a colleague and somebody I've worked with for the last several years. Can you bring up the Goodrich case slide? I'll keep talking while Sean works that out. Hillary Goodridge lives in Massachusetts, and she and her partner Julie became the lead plaintiffs in Goodridge versus the Department of Public Health, the landmark Massachusetts Supreme Court judicial case which made Massachusetts the first state to find that same-sex couples had the right to marry, which ultimately led the way for gay marriage being declared legal by the U.S. Supreme Court. How are we doing, Sean? If it won't come up, that's all right. You can just take the slides down. So Hillary and Julie, that case was actually won, and Hillary and Julie were married at the UUA offices by then President Reverend Bill Sinkford on May 17, 2004, the first day same-sex marriages became legal in Massachusetts, and what became known as the wedding that changed America. There it is. So this is Hillary in the center, and the woman whose hand she's holding is her then partner, Julie. Can we get to the next one? And this is their wedding. This is Reverend Bill Sinkford, who was president of the UUA at that time, marrying the two of them. As I said, in the wedding that became known as the wedding that changed America. It was a full 11 years later before the U.S. Supreme Court declared same-sex marriage legal in all of the United States. And so thank you, Hillary and Julie and all the other plaintiffs in that case. It is important that we see and hear this evidence of embracing possibilities and bringing something new into being. We all know there is still so much work to be done, many more possibilities to imagine, to embrace. When I've asked others what possibilities does the LGBTQ plus community need to embrace moving forward, everyone has said, without exception, that it was those of transgender rights and acceptance of trans people as human beings, as Julie just mentioned, and I agree. But I am also concerned that hard-won rights might someday be eroded, just as we are seeing voting rights be eroded, and attempts at women's legal rights to an abortion being eroded. We must remain steadfast, all of us, both we who are in the LGBTQIA plus community and those of you who count yourself as allies. Because when we talk about fighting for liberty and justice and LGBTQ plus rights for all, this is a fight for all of us, not just a particular group of people. As one group's rights are eroded, it opens up the very real possibility that anyone's rights can be eroded for any reason given, based on the fear or limited ways of thinking and believing and understanding among certain groups of people who hold power and have trouble seeing or respecting the inherent worth and dignity of us all. If there's one possibility I invite us all to imagine, embrace, call, and commit our hearts and memories to, it's these 10 words. None of us is free until all of us is free. That's just 10 words. Remember them, and let us make it so, my friends. Amen and Ashe. As we live into the possibilities of beloved community, all are invited to give the gifts of time, talent, and treasure, all with an ethic of love. At this time, we take up our morning offering. While some give through an automatic draft each week, there is also a link in the chat box that anyone may use to give at this time. You may also go to ERUUF.org and click the Give button at the top of the screen. And we now go to our offertory, and the song is Speak Out and Be Heard. We give thanks for all of the gifts given in our community. Our last hymn this morning is Love Will Guide Us, and Pam DeLavore is our cantor, and the words will be on your screen.
within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Our closing words are adapted from the words of the Reverend Teresa in his Soto. The thing we must be are ourselves, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone as though we are made of something hard and unforgivable. We are human. We belong right here, right now. And together we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibility that the future is a space for growth. Go in peace, go in love, and may your life be a blessing.